name's Andy Rainey, and this is my story. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't have much of a church context. I went to Sunday school a few times, but that was really to hang out with friends. I couldn't tell you a single Bible story. And the only context that I had to church was a Catholic church up the street from our house. And nothing against Catholic churches, but that's what I thought church was. There was a cross, there was pews, there were stained glass windows. Later, I learned that my mom had a friend that attended there, whom I knew, and she had been praying for me all these years. I had no idea as a young boy. I didn't know much about God. I had no context to him. The only thing I thought about God was he didn't like me. So I kind of grew up with that context in mind about church, about faith, about God. I get married. A couple years into my marriage, we start having conversations about what would it look like if we weren't married anymore. Then one day, driving home from Indiana, where I grew up, back to Blue Ash home from bowling, drinking more than I should, talking on the phone with my wife, I said, maybe we should start going to church. And to my surprise, she said, I've been thinking the same thing. And I say surprise because we never talked about church other than the one we're going to get married in. So we decided we're going to go to a church for a month and then try another church for a month and then try another church for a month until we find a church that we like. My wife had a friend who had been invited to the vineyard in Tri-County. And so all three of us decided, let's start there. So we all three go to church, and I'll never forget coming over the crest of the hill there and seeing this massive building. This isn't anything like I thought church was. Cars were everywhere. We walk in, we get to the auditorium, there are people in jeans, they have coffees in their hands, there's a rock band on stage, people are raising their hands. I was completely uncomfortable. I couldn't wait to get out of there. We leave, and I was like, we're never going back to that church again. But 2 or 3 days pass, and we decide, you know what? We said we're gonna go for a month, let's go back. So the three of us go back the next week, and literally in 1 week, everything flipped. What I didn't like, all of a sudden I liked. I'd go in and go, I can wear jeans here. I can bring my coffee in. There's a rock band on stage. So everything that I didn't like, God has switched and changed, and I loved it. And we never left. That was the only church we tried out. A couple of months into that, we decided, hey, let's check out these small groups they keep talking about. So these are small group Sanford. We met in the gym, and you kind of sit in on a small group for 3 to 5 minutes and go to another one, try to figure out what you liked. We had this younger group of people, which we were young then, that we kind of gravitated towards, ended up joining their small group. He happened to live a mile up the street. And I'll never forget, leading up to that first meeting, I called the small group leader. I just bought this New Testament. And I called him and said, hey, I just got a New Testament. And he was like, yeah, that's what we talk about the most anyway. I had no idea there was an Old and New Testament. So me, my wife, her friend, we go into this small group and we say to each other, if they start singing in here, we're leaving. So God has a sense of humor. There's 15 of us in this small little apartment, a guy playing guitar, but not very well, singing songs I don't really know. I'm new to this whole church thing. This now ranked as the most awkward thing I'd ever been a part of. We leave and said, we're not going back there. That was weird. But of course, we found ourselves back the very next week. About 6 months into my small group experience with that group, the small group leader comes to me and says, Andy, you know what? I've been thinking, I'm not gonna be the leader anymore. I'm gonna take a coach's role. I've talked to some other people in the small group, and we've nominated you as the leader. I was blown away. I didn't know I could say no. I just said yes. And it's the best decision I ever made. God knew exactly what he was doing. It forced me to learn something to talk about. So I found myself diving into scripture, and God put this hunger, not just for the word, for the Bible, for scripture, but he put this hunger to learn, this hunger to read. Leading up to that point in my life, young 20s, if I'd read 6 books, that'd be a lot. And I'm gonna be honest with you, 4 of those books were probably on Michael Jordan. I just didn't read. I didn't have a desire to. But now God puts this hunger, this desire to learn more about him, to read more about him, and that's still true today. I read 20 to 40 books a year now. I just feel like I'm so far behind. I have so much to learn. So I lead this group for the next year and a half, 2 years, and then get into a program called Alpha. Alpha is a 10-week basic Christianity course, and just fell in love with it. Joined it for my wife. My wife wanted to join it, and I never left. I was a part of that ministry for 5 years, and that's where my faith really grew. Not only did I hear these messages each and every week, but then I became a leader, and now I'm helping people facilitate and create conversations around Jesus Christ. And because we decided to go to church, just kind of out of a whim, it saved our marriage. It changed me. I'm the man who I am today because of Jesus Christ. I like to tell people, I'm living the dream, but it isn't mine. It's better. Without Jesus, I wouldn't be married to an amazing woman of almost 23 years. I wouldn't have 4 amazing kids. I certainly wouldn't be a pastor of a church. Jesus not only saved me, he saved my marriage. And that's my story.